of balance, fulfillment, and joy. I'm Kayla Sweet, and together we're going to have fun and create change from the inside out. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. Welcome back and Happy New Year. It is January 1st, 2025, and I am so excited and so grateful to be here with you today. Today is a really special day for me personally, but also for us collectively as a community here on Internally Guided Life and just as human beings. This is the first day of a new calendar year. So collectively, we get to step into the newness and the potential and the possibility. But also, on a very personal level, this is a celebratory day for me because it is a milestone, a marker for two really meaningful events in my life. And the first is that this is the 1-year anniversary of Internally Guided Life. We have been together on this journey for a year now. The first episode went out last year. It was titled New Year Intentions, and it was a powerful beginning to a journey that took me places I could have never imagined. And I am so excited and kind of awestruck by the fact that here we are a year later and still going strong and growing this community at a pace I just never really anticipated. So I'm celebrating that today, that it's been 1 year of this podcast, 1 year with all of you, 1 year with all of the amazing guests that have come on the show. And it's also the 3-year anniversary of me being engaged to my husband. So we got engaged 3 years ago today, and then we got married 2 years ago in July. So it's very exciting that this day is just so infused for me with meaning and care and potential and celebration. So that's the headspace I'm entering into this episode with, and the heart space that I'm coming to you from as we record today. And I really just want to start by thanking each of you for being part of this, for being part of this journey. This podcast really started as a dream, as a vision, as an idea of a place where I could help in co-creating a space that we could explore and learn and grow together, and where I could bring you resources to help you thrive in your life. And here we are, a year in, and I have to say it's been all of that, but it's also become so much more than I ever could have imagined. It's really become a community, a conversation, a shared journey, an adventure, a opportunity to connect. You all have shown up for me with your hearts open, with your minds open. I know I've pushed those at times. And with your souls, your spirits, your essence, hungry and ready to connect, to heal, to transform, to grow alongside me. And I just can't even express how endlessly grateful I am for that. So to kick off today's episode, I just want to say that I feel so much love for this podcast and for each of you. And I am so thankful for 1 year, 1 year of stories, of insights, of soulful moments, of self-discovery for me personally, and hopefully for all of you as well. and let's commit to many more to come. I'm more invested than ever in this community, in this show, and sharing this space and time with all of you, and having this safe place to grow together and to be seen, and to have resources that are easily accessible for women especially. So yes, this is a celebration today. And before we get into the topic, it's going to be a New Year's episode. I feel like that, makes sense with this being the anniversary episode for the show and it being on New Year's Day. And I do want to talk about something a little different, but before I get into the nuances of what I want to share with you today, I just want to say that as we're celebrating a year together on the podcast, I really want you to think of this as something that can hopefully serve as inspiration or as an example for you as you're setting your goals, your resolutions, your intentions, whatever it may be that you like to do at the beginning of a new year. Because while these milestone dates have a really high level of psychological significance and impact for us, it's the follow through that creates the magic, the growth, the expansion, the transformation. And as I'm celebrating 1 year of the podcast, I want you all to know that I'm not just celebrating that it's been 1 year since I released that first episode, that it's been 1 year since I decided to buy the equipment and record. I'm celebrating a year of showing up, no matter what else came up, because this was important to me. And so I made space for it and I prioritized it, no matter how hard it was, no matter what competing priorities came up in my life. And I think this is just as important to remember with any kind of goal setting, any kind of resolution making, vision boarding, whatever it is that you do, to know that this is a powerful ignition point, but it's not going to feed the flames that your mind, body, soul need to just leave whatever happens today or this week or this month at the beginning of the year. You have to follow through. You have to have some kind of a plan to commit when it gets hard to do it. Because it's easy at the beginning. You commit to the thing, you've got a cute quippy saying or a really fancy goal, but that's not the thing that's going to bring you the wealth of meaning and fulfillment and achievement that getting to whatever is on the other side for you will. And you won't get there if you don't maintain that consistency. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're talking today. But I actually am taking today's episode in a direction that is a little surprising even to me. So I thought about this episode a lot. I thought about what I wanted to share, what I wanted it to mean, what I wanted it to provide as a service. And I thought about taking it so many directions. There was a part of me that just wanted to scrap the idea of goal setting and creating resolutions entirely, because I've been seeing it everywhere for the last week or two, that it's the time of the year and everyone's talking about it. And not to say it's not important, but as I mentioned last year in the podcast, a lot of people don't actually follow through on their resolutions, and that can have some negative effects. So there was a part of me that just wanted to throw all of that out the window. There was another part of me that, didn't want to send the message that setting goals isn't important, because I set a lot of goals for myself. It's part of what's gotten me where I'm at today. I set daily, weekly, monthly, yearly goals for myself in all contexts, personally, within the work I do in organizations, within my business, within the podcast. Like, I am a goal setting machine. So it does matter. It does help. It is important. It's not the only thing that matters. And I think there's something that has to come from within us beneath the goals that really matters more. And I wanted to start to scratch at that a little bit today. And I know I talked about intentions last year, and I do think that is still valid and still powerful. And if you want to set a New Year's intention and you want to learn about that concept, I would really encourage you to go back to last year's episode and listen if you haven't, or re listen, because all of the things that I said and felt at that time are still so real. So that's there for you. I also thought about making this episode about celebrating, because we can set resolutions and goals and intentions and all of these things, but we're not always as good at celebrating once we've reached something, once we've achieved something, once we've survived something. Especially for people who are high achievers. I think many of you will relate to this. For me, I'm great at setting the goals, I'm great at reaching the goals. I'm a lot less good at slowing down, celebrating the goal, really soaking in the thing that I've done before I move on to the next thing. And so I thought that could be interesting to explore. But what I landed on, and what I'm actually going to share with you all today, now that we're 10 minutes in, is something that's of an entirely different texture. But it kind of integrates all of the above. And that is, I want to talk about becoming bold in 2025. And why right now, today, is the perfect time to embark on this journey. So, boldness is this idea that's been kind of simmering beneath the surface of my soul for a little while now. Trying to make bold moves, be bold in my business and my personal life. And I started to think about what that means to me, and what it means in general, and how we can really embrace this process of becoming bold as part of our growth, as part of our empowerment, as part of our healing. So when you look at dictionary definitions of boldness, you're going to see things like the willingness to take risks, act innovatively, to be brave, and to show confidence, and to step forward even when you don't know where you're going, or if the outcome is really unclear. And all of that stuff is true, and it makes sense, and it's got some strength behind it. It's empowering. But for me, boldness actually goes much deeper than that. I don't think it's just about, taking risk, or, stepping into our bravery. Those are parts of it, for sure. But I think at its core, becoming bold is about becoming aligned. It's about showing up authentically and unapologetically for who we are, even when it's hard, even when it feels incredibly vulnerable, even when it's countercultural. It's about trusting ourselves, our values, our purpose, our mission in life, and letting that stuff be the anchor and the compass, the thing that keeps us rooted and strong and moving forward in the direction we want to go. For me, boldness is also rooted in worthiness. I don't think we can really be bold in our lives in a meaningful way if we don't feel that we are innately worthy. If we don't believe in our heart of hearts that we do not need to be fixed, that we are not broken, that we don't need to be perfect. If we can recognize that all of that's true, that we are whole already, that we are worthy already, then we can take those bold steps forward from that place. Because you're already enough. I'm already enough. We are all here fully equipped to live our lives boldly and to thrive courageously. And sometimes the boldest thing we can do is to live in alignment with that truth. So, as we talk about the new year and celebrating and growing, I want you to keep this concept of what it means to be bold in the center of your mind. I want you to reflect on some questions, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but this would be a great episode to have a notebook or even just the notes app in your phone handy to write down your own personal reflections on how some of this is landing with you. And I'm going to share questions throughout that would be a great idea for you to write down and spend some time with, meditating on, journaling on, thinking through, talking through with a friend or a family member or a loved one. So some of those questions when it comes to this idea of boldness for you to think on are, how do you define boldness in your life? I shared with you what it means to me. What does it mean to you? How could you be bold in your life? And where in your life are you already bold? Where have you already taken bold steps forward? And what might it look like to intentionally step into 2025 with a spirit of boldness, with bold alignment? So those are some questions to get you thinking as we move forward. So we're in a new year. It's 2025. And I think it's important to take a moment to reflect. Not just on what we've done, although I did mention those celebrations are very important, but also on who we've become. This past year has been one of tremendous growth for me personally, professionally, in every avenue of my life. From celebrating meaningful milestones to navigating new challenges, I have been reminded over and over and over of the power of community, the power of healing, the power of presence, the power of showing up imperfectly, and how that is so much more impactful than not showing up at all. For me this year, I made a lot of changes. So not only did we have the podcast going on, I've made big steps in my coaching business and my consulting business, but I also work in organizations still. And I was working with an organization that I had spent time with for 6 years, had spent significant time of my adult life in, and I felt really aligned with their mission, their values, the people they served. And even still, I felt a pull to say goodbye. And so I did. And if any of you follow me on social media, you know that I stepped out of that space and into another one, another space in which I had no history in that context. Still in learning and development, but very much a growth opportunity in terms of a different industry, a different culture. And I guess I'm sharing this with you now because we all have these things that we do in our lives that you've done last year in 2024. Some challenge that you took even though it was scary, some step, some momentum that moved you forward into the unknown. And in those moments, we are reminded of what matters through the challenge. Because stuff is changing all the time, whether we're choosing the change or the change is just rolling into our lives. We get to be humbled again and again and again by being beginners, by not knowing, by learning, by growing. All of these things sound really cute and fun, when you're talking about it. But the honest truth is growth and healing and being a beginner and being in a new context is scary. And it's hard. It's challenging. It brings up all your fears and your doubts and your worries. And you get to sit with those parts of yourself that are unsure. That's part of it, and that's worth celebrating. So take a moment and think about what you are proud of from this last year. Was there a big step that you took that made you feel uncertain or that brought you into an unfamiliar territory, but that you're so glad that you did because you learned something, you grew, or maybe you just survived, and that's worth celebrating too, because the fact that you are listening right now says something really powerful about where you're at and what you are becoming, who you are becoming. All of that is worth celebrating, big and small. So spend some time thinking about what you're proud of. What could you celebrate? Because celebrating is incredibly important. When we celebrate what we've done and we feel gratitude for it, even the stuff that sucked, even the stuff that was really hard and that tested us, if we can find gratitude for the lessons that we learned through that, amidst the hardship, that enhances our well-being. And this is grounded in research in positive psychology that shows that gratitude is one of the most effective tools for enhancing our well-being. There are studies by Emmons and McCullough that found that regularly practicing gratitude, it not only improves our mental health, but it also strengthens our relationships and increases our resilience. This is why things like gratitude journals and gratitude practices are so popular and people swear by them, because this stuff does work. But I think it has to come from an authentic place, and you can't let it become mechanical, like something you're just going through the motions to do. Like, it has to come from the heart. It has to come from the soul. So celebration and gratitude, they go together really well. They go hand in hand, because we can be grateful for what we have and what we've learned. And a way to mark those things is to celebrate them, to actually spend time in that heart of celebration for things we've achieved or who we've become or lessons we've learned. I think sometimes the celebration, for me anyways, makes the gratitude more fun. It feels less like martyrish. Like, oh, I'm so grateful to be alive. Like, yes, I am. But what would it look like to celebrate my life? There's just a different texture to it that's more fun. So that's one thought I'll share with you to start, as far as just making sure that you're looking back at your last year with that heart and that spirit of celebration and gratitude as you move into the new year. Because we're leaving a year behind, but we're also carrying it with us into the next year. It's part of us forever now. Whatever's happened is reality, and there's no reason to hold anything against it or fight it. But if we can at least accept it, and at most celebrate it, we're going to be able to move forward with space. And that space is going to open up opportunities to be bold. Because if we all embrace boldness in 2025, I don't think that's just about reflection. I don't think it's just about the way you show up in the moment authentically. That's all part of it. I think it's reflecting. I think it's celebrating. I think it's authenticity. I also think it's about cultivating energy from that space to step forward with intentionality. And I want to support you all in embracing boldness this year, because we were meant to stand out. And it's so much easier to just be ourselves in all of our uniqueness than to try to be like anyone else. But that does require some bravery, some confidence, some boldness. And the reason that a new year is a good time for this, so January 1, I Why is now a good time to set bold goals, reflect, celebrate, create space to become more bold in your life? The reason is because these milestones, these markers in our calendars, they are temporal landmarks. These are things like the start of a new year or a birthday or an anniversary. And they cause something called the fresh start effect. So, when we experience the fresh start effect, it allows us to reframe our thinking and to kind of see our life through a clean slate mentality. It gives us a mental marker to say one chapter has closed and another is opening. And this is why people use this time to set goals, to feel motivated, and to get some momentum. And this is backed by research. There was a study by Dye, Milkman, and Reese in 2014 that showed that the concept of this fresh start effect really provided this momentum to enable people to distance themselves from past challenges, past failures, past hurts, and really boldly envision new possibilities. So, the reason that New Year's feel like, it's a chance to leave behind bad patterns or bad habits is because we're getting a natural calendar built in psychological reset that's going to boost us towards possibility rather than habit and existing realities from the year prior. Now, I want to also note that just because it's the new year and we have this natural mile marker, it doesn't mean we can't use this understanding of the fresh start effect to build these in at other places. I don't think the new year is the only time that you can get a fresh start. I think any day you can wake up in the morning and decide it's the first day of the rest of your life, because it is. But our brains need something symbolically to help us turn that page. And that is what the new year does. But we can do that any time of the year. So if you're catching this episode late, no fear. You just might need to create some ceremony or ritual or intentionality around the new beginning that you're seeking so that you have that milestone, that temporal landmark to signify that it's the start of something new, that you can lean into the potential and possibility of what is to come. And there's a lot of other reasons that this time of the year is a good time to make change, to create what we are striving for in our lives. There's support in research in positive psychology that shows us that when we do things like goal set and align ourselves, that it helps us to feel like we're flourishing in our lives. So using this time to set meaningful goals, it's going to enhance our life satisfaction. And because the start of the year is this temporal landmark, it encourages intentional reflection on what matters. And when we set goals that are meaningful and that are aligned and aren't just driven by whatever we think the world thinks we should do, but connected to our deep intrinsic values, that's going to lead to that flourishing, to that fulfillment that is the focus of positive psychology. So I guess the reason I'm sharing some of these research studies with you all is because I want you to know when I speak to you, when I share suggestions and ideas, I'm telling you things that have a high probability of being able to help you if you follow through, if you lean in. These are research-backed psychological theories that have been well studied and that can support you, that can be tools in your toolbox, that can be ways to know yourself at a deeper level and show up in a way that you feel like you're thriving in your life. So if you've got that pen, I have a few questions for you. You can write down and reflect on. I want you to think about what brings you joy. What brings you joy? What brings you fulfillment? What small, meaningful steps could you take to living more boldly or flourishing or thriving more fully? What could that look like for you? How can you focus some time and energy on that? So, the takeaway from all of this is that these milestone dates are powerful psychologically and symbolically. They give us a chance to connect and reflect. And that is why people spend this time setting goals, setting resolutions, making intentions, and allowing themselves permission to dream of what their life could be. It is a good time for all of this. It's a good time to plan and align. And I think you would be well served to lean into the symbolic richness of this time of the year and lean into this unique opportunity to pause and realign and to approach your life with intentionality and create a space for something new to emerge. But I also want you to know that this isn't the only time of the year that you can do these things. And what you actually need right now is going to really highly depend on the season that you're in. And so I'm about to share with you for the rest of this episode some tips, some tricks, some practices, some things that you can do to embrace what you need and where you're at and where you want to go and who you want to boldly become. But before I share these things, I want you to know that your season matters. And so far, we've talked about why this time of the year is important to me. We've celebrated a year of internally guided life. We've talked about the power of this time of the year, of this milestone, and how it invites us in to this space of reflection and newness. But your season matters. And what you need is going to depend on you. So whether you're needing goals or resolutions or rest or intentions or reflections or celebrations or all of the above, it depends on the unique makeup of your life and your inner landscape right now. So if a suggestion or an invitation that I make for the rest of this episode or in any episode doesn't feel useful, leave it. But if it feels like it could nourish you in this season, if it feels like it could align with who you are trying to become, then find a way to commit with it and run with it. Find a way to invite it into your life and to prioritize it. But if it doesn't align, the other part of this invitation to being bold, this concept, this idea of what it could mean to live boldly this year, is not to listen to me or anyone else for that matter if something doesn't align with what you want and need in your life right now. So what I'm about to share are invitations. They're ideas. They're based on psychological research into well-being that could support you this year in getting where you so deeply want to go in a meaningful way, with a spirit of boldness. And I invite you to see what sticks, see what lands, see what feels useful, and run with that. So, the first suggestion I have as you are navigating the new year and trying to determine what what you want to embrace this year. Maybe it's boldness. Maybe it's rest, healing, slowness. Maybe it's a ignition point for you to powerfully and passionately burn forward towards your goals. Whatever the outcome you are desiring is, one thing you can do, you can learn to do, is to honor the sacredness and the importance of the small and unglamorous steps along the way. One of the boldest things that we can do is start small. Sometimes when I say things like bold, words are finicky. We have all of these associations tied to them. We might think of a grand gesture, a huge leap, something that's very public, something that is seen by everybody and makes a dramatic impact. And it could be that. But more often than not, boldness isn't in the big leaps. It's in the quiet, small, persistent steps forward that create the magic of our lives, that actually move us towards the things we want and the things that matter, that make the biggest impact. Like I shared at the beginning of the show, it wasn't deciding to start a podcast that got me to a 1-year anniversary. It was deciding to show up for that podcast for a year and all of the things that went into editing and setting up meetings with people and vetting people to bring on the show and getting to know people and then sticking to the interviews and finding space in my schedule. All of those things, all of those little commitments, those are what got me here. And that's what will get you to whatever your goal might be. It's not the big thing. It's the little things that get you there that actually matter. And I mentioned all of the things I'm going to share with you are aligned with, with science, with evidence. I'm not sharing things just because I think they sound cool. But this idea that the small steps are actually the most sacred, the most important, the things we really should be prioritizing is something that has been proven time and again in research across behavioral science sectors. And the overarching theme is that the small and consistent habits that we create in our lives compound over time. And that compound effect is what creates the lasting change. So if you haven't heard of the compound effect, I think I've spoken to this on other episodes, but this is really it's the way that we talk about the impact that small positive actions have on us over time. It's the impact of the steady and incremental steps that over time have huge positive impact and gain momentum as they go, like rolling a snowball. It starts really small, but as you keep going, it collects more and more and it grows faster and faster. And that's kind of how the compound effect works in our lives. The longer we sustain certain behaviors, the greater the cumulative effect. And it's also important to note that this can work for us or against us. So these small actions that compound, that create momentum in our lives, that, really create our results in our lives, they can be good or bad or neutral. If the small thing you're doing every day is a small, unhealthy step, that's going to have a compound effect too. So this invitation to honor the small things is also an invitation to respect. Respect the power of our small daily decisions and consider on a regular basis if these things are in alignment with the future we want, with who we want to become, with what we want to do. And if you want to dig into this deeper, if you want to really learn how these small habits, these incremental steps can really create powerful change in your life, I highly recommend checking out James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits, and this is built on all kinds of psychological research that shows the way that habits compound over time. So he is kind of like a game changer as far as some of his syntheses between psychological research and really pulling together the practicalities of how to do this. So I would recommend checking out his work if this particular suggestion feels relevant to you. If you recognize that maybe those small things that you're doing every day are not currently getting you where you want to go, then creating some habits that are more boldly aligned with who you want to be could be a great place for you to start. And while we're talking about this, before we move on to my next suggestion, I just think it's important that as we take an assessment of our lives where we are now, as we celebrate things, it's important to draw the line between those small things and the big thing we're celebrating, and recognize that that was a compound effect, right? And also to know that the current results in your life, no matter how you judge them, are the result of the actions that have come before. They are the compound effect of everything that's come before. And so if there are things in your life that you're really uncomfortable with right now, that you really don't like, that you really want to see change or growth or space or movement in, think about the small things that got you there too. Because if you can recognize those little tiny daily things that are contributing to that heaviness, that weight, that lack of joy or lack of energy, that gap, that absence, or that heavy presence of something dark or unwanted in your life, if you can identify those small daily things that got you there, that created the results you currently have, you can really mindfully and intentionally decide to let those things go and replace them with other small steps, with other habits, with other practices that actually serve you. And if you don't draw those lines, then sometimes we end up in a place we don't know how we got there and we don't know how to get out. So if you are someone who has a lot that you're hoping to see move and change, I do recommend thinking about what small actions and decisions created your current results. And while there's a lot of things that are out of our control in these lives of ours, there is an incredible amount of things that are in control, in our direct control in our daily lives. And we have to take the personal responsibility and power over those things if we want to see real change in our circumstance. So enough on that. I could go on and on, but honor the sacredness of the small steps. So maybe spend some time reflecting on what small and consistent steps you have taken towards positive things in your life. And if you have something that you're wanting to change, maybe think about the small things that got you there that you could replace or swap for other practices or habits that might feel more bold, more intentional, more useful for you this year. My second suggestion is to create some space for the unfolding to happen. What the heck do I mean by this? Well, boldness for me also is about surrendering. It's about trusting the unfolding of our journey and showing up in the present moment fully for that process, even when it's hard, even when it sucks, even when you can't predict what's coming next, even when change is unfolding all around you. Create space in your life to embrace the process. Because if you are stepping into this year with a desire for changes, with a desire for growth and expansion, transformation and possibility, you got to create some space for the stickiness that's going to happen in between. And you're going to have to let go of any concept or ideas you have around perfection or certainty. Because those are two things that we just never have in our human lives. And striving towards them is exhausting and fruitless. So being bold, from this perspective that I'm taking of boldness on this episode, is about embracing the unknown, the things that you can't control, the things in your circumstances and your environment, with curiosity and trust. And this is really grounded in mindfulness research and different evidence-based practices like DBT or ACT. So if you want to look up some practices around those, that could be useful for you. Write those down. But accepting and surrendering doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean a lack of personal control. It means that the first suggestion I made and the second have to walk in partnership forward in this journey of whatever you want to unfold in 2025. As you are taking ownership and personal power for the small things in your life, you also have to create space for the things you can't control and for the things you can't be certain of. Take control of what you can, create space for what you can't, accept what is reality, and move forward. Maintain a sense of curiosity and trust in the process, even when it's hard. And I think that's one of the things that keep people from maintaining their goals or resolutions. And I talk about this in the episode I did last year, but a lot of people don't continue to work on their New Year's resolutions or goals until like February and March. Like the momentum for these things does not typically last long. And I think part of it is because of this second suggestion I just made. They haven't created space for the discomfort, for the lack of perfection, and for the uncertainty that life will undoubtedly put in front of us and create barriers between us and our goals. At the beginning, when something's new and fresh and fun, it's easier to stick to. But when life throws us challenges we didn't expect, or when progress is happening slower than we thought, or when everything around us feels like chaos, nothing is working, nothing feels easy, that's when we let things drop off and we fall back into those old habits that weren't serving us, will continue not to serve us, but they're these ingrained, well-paved mental and behavioral pathways. And it's so easy to slide back into those, and it's dangerous if you want more for your life. So create space for the discomfort, for the unfolding, for some trust in the process, even when it's painful. And I think some persistence and discipline are important in this step as well. So as you're creating space and accepting, you also need to create discipline. And some of these concepts might seem like they are counterintuitive, but I promise you, it's these dichotomies that really create our human experience and move us forward in ways that we might not be able to imagine right now. So let go of the need for perfection. Let go of certainty. You're not going to get them. And create space for challenge to be an opportunity. I know it sounds cheesy, but the way we think about things really creates their impact on our lives. So that is what I will leave you with for that suggestion. The last suggestion I have for you is to anchor yourself in your values. And I've talked about values before, and I will continue to talk about values because this stuff matters. And when we are connected to our values, we can use those. That is our compass. That is our anchor. I was talking about this earlier in the show. The things that matter to us, they can help us align boldly with the future that we're desiring. And boldness in our lives becomes sustainable when it's rooted in what actually matters to us. I'm not talking about boldness today for boldness sake, to just be, I don't know, counterculture for the heck of it, but to be boldly and authentically you because it's rooted in what you actually care about, where your heart is being guided, what your soul actually wants. So I have a prompt for you to go along with this. And if you've done values work before and you've identified your top 3 or 5 values, that's great. And I want you to revisit that because sometimes these shift and change with our season and they might be different now. If you've never done values work before, or even if you have, if you're somebody that enjoys journaling or meditating or like walking in reflection, I want you to engage in a practice along what matters. That's your journal prompt. What matters? What matters to you? What matters right now? What matters in your life, in your relationships, in your work, in your health and well-being? What matters? And just spend some time with that question because it's going to highlight for you your values indirectly. It's going to help you to anchor yourself boldly in the things that matter. And I really do encourage, no matter what pieces of this maybe stood out to you that you want to try, that you allow these concepts, these ideas, these suggestions, and this challenge to be more bold, that you allow it and invite it into every area of your life. I want you to think about what boldness means in your relationships, what it means in your career, what it means in your well-being, in your rest, in your joy, in your purpose. You get to become bold. You get to choose that path, what that means to you, what you embrace. You can boldly rebel against the glorified busyness. You can boldly pursue the things you want. You can boldly show up vulnerably and with rawness in your conversations, in your relationships. You can set bold boundaries. You can show up authentically as you build connection boldly, bravely. This is my invitation for you this year, to be bold with me. This is something I'm sharing with you all and something I am going to be leaning into this year, and something that I am going to be intentional about bringing onto the show for you. Women that are living bold lives, doing bold things, and really making a powerful impact. As you know, I like to leave you with actionable practices that you can do today. And I know some of the things I've talked through, you've kind of gotten to hear all of my New Year's reflections and mental meanderings. And thank you for listening. But if you're maybe feeling inspired right now but aren't sure where to start, I want to give you just a few quick and easy suggestions that could give you a place to start, like a practical, tangible, let's get out of the theoretical and the conceptual and into the day-to-day. What could this look like for you? So if you're not sure at all where to start, and you've done the journaling and you've done the what matters and you've thought about what boldness means to you and you're still like, I don't know, this is too much, I'm overwhelmed, then here's a few things, a few ideas to get you started. So the first would be a morning alignment practice. What the heck is that? Spend 5 minutes each morning reconnecting with you. Think about your personal mission, your vision, your values, what you want for your life. Spend 5 minutes in the morning thinking about the small things you can do throughout the day that would be steps towards that, that would align you with that greater future, with that person you're becoming, with those bold goals that you've set for yourself. 5 minutes every day. That's all it takes. I know most of you spend more time than that on your phones, on social media or in emails. You're listening to this podcast and you made it to the end, so you've found a time to spend an hour with me. You can spend 5 minutes with yourself each day, I promise. Another quick and easy suggestion is to keep a celebration journal. You've probably heard of gratitude journals, and those are great too, and you can also do that if that's something you've never done. I kept a gratitude journal for a year, and it was a powerful practice. For me, I get bored if I do the same thing though, so I had to find creative ways to keep it interesting. But a celebration journal is not something I hear talked about as much. So instead of keeping track of the things you're grateful for, note one thing worth celebrating each day or each week. Sometimes daily feels like too much, but I promise you, when you start looking for these things, you will find them. It mentally rewires your brain to find the things worth celebrating when you are looking for them. And then it primes you to have more things to celebrate. And it creates this kind of ripple effect of positive emotion in your life. So this is a really fun one that could be interesting to try. And the last kind of quick, easy suggestion is to just set a monthly check-in with yourself and put it on your calendar once a month on repeat so you don't forget to do it. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 15 minutes. It depends on how busy you are and what other responsibilities might be pulling at you. But set aside time, put it on your calendar, honor it, and use that time to reflect on how you're showing up in your life. What's working? What needs to shift? And are you still in alignment with whatever things you said you wanted to do or wanted to become or ways you wanted to heal this year? I think we lose the intentionality a couple weeks or months in, and that's where the momentum takes a dive. So you have to create these temporal landmarks for yourself, and by each month, maybe at the beginning of each month, considering that as a page turning day, considering that as a time to reflect and realign and reorient, that's going to create that psychological invitation for you to make sure that you are still showing up for what matters. Okay, I think I've shared more than enough to get you thinking about how you can live a meaningful life this year. How can you boldly be who you are? How you can boldly become in 2025. So I will close this episode with this. Boldness isn't about perfection or fearlessness. It's about showing up for your life intentionally, courageously, and lovingly. It's about honoring the sacred aliveness within you and trusting that you are already worthy and capable of the life you are dreaming of right now. You are already worthy and capable. And all of this, all of these things we've talked about today are ways to honor and love and care for yourself a little more boldly. So here's to a year of becoming bold, of unlocking potential, of living in alignment with purpose, and staying connected to the heart, to what matters. Thank you so much for being part of this journey with me. You inspire me every single day, and I love that I am privileged to keep showing up for all of you for Internally Guided Life. It's such a privilege. Thank you. I hope you found at least one thing, if not many things, that you can chew on and make real in your life, not just today, but all year. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you want more resources on thriving in your life or want details on working with me, check out my website at internallyguidedleadership.com or follow me on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Internally Guided Coach. Be gentle with yourselves out there, and I'll talk to you next time.